ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the ESO Podcast, your Elder Scrolls Online podcast. My name is Dennis Duhamel. Most of you probably know me as Force, and I am joined here by Jesse Cox. Hello, Jesse.
Hello.
We're back in it. We're back getting hyped about games.
I'm so happy to be back. It's been a little bit, buddy. We really haven't done this in a while. This is exciting.
Yeah, so if you don't remember, Jesse and I, of course, did Diablo cast, getting pumped up for Diablo and enjoyed the game when it was released, but sort of stopped the cast after that. And now we're back, this time getting pumped up about the Elder Scrolls Online. Easily one of my most anticipated games of this year. I'm really super excited for this game to come out. I've got high hopes, Jesse, high hopes. And based on your visit with the game, got potential? It's looking good?
If for those who watch my video, I definitely think it has potential. This is one of those games that I'm really excited about because of its potential. I really truly hope that it becomes the next big thing. But again, it's all potential, and it's all up to what the developers do, which is why I'm really excited for this podcast, because we're going to be talking about it as they create this game, which is, I guess, set to release in 2013. So 2014. What year is it again?
It's 2013.
2001. What's happening? A year from now, whenever it comes out,
right?
I'm really excited for the process of getting there, and that's what I love about games, is the creation and seeing whether it meets my expectations. And so right now, my expectations are very high. I did have the pleasure of being at ZeniMax to go through it all, and the people I was there with, the people from the community that was there with me, we really hammered the devs with, like, look, it's got to be like this. And they were really receptive, so I'm hoping that that receptiveness equals they're going to make the game what we really truly want it to be, which to be amazing.
Yeah, for Elder Scroll fans, for MMO fans, lots of anticipation with this title. So let's just briefly talk about what we're going to do here. Again, this is the ESO podcast, Elder Scrolls Online podcast, and the plan with this is for us to generally talk about the game, but also keep you guys up to date on major news announcements and stuff like that. Now, since this is the inaugural episode, the very first one, I'd like to just briefly talk about some of the basics of the game if you're not too familiar with ESO. We're going to just cover some of the bases here. So, of course, this is an MMORPG set in the Elder Scrolls universe. The game is set to take place on the continent of Tamriel 1,000 years before the events of Skyrim. So if you like dragons, unfortunately, looks like they're not going to be there. Dragons didn't exist then. And it is planned, so far, I believe, to plan to launch in 2013, although it may be 2014. They've said 2013, but I would not be surprised if it got pushed back till next year. So who knows?
It'll be out when it be out.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Exactly. Now, in terms of who's making this game, this is being developed by ZeniMax Online Studio. They're a developer based in Hunt Valley, Maryland, and they were founded by the ZeniMax Media Corporation, and also specifically by Matt Fyroor is his name. Matt was an original member of Mythic Entertainment, where he worked as a producer on Dark Age of Camelot. So you're going to notice some themes in this game coming from Dark Age of Camelot for that very reason. One of the founders of the game was part of that team. Again, he was a producer for that team. So there seems to be still some confusion out there in terms of people saying, oh man, the Elder Scrolls Online, does this mean they're going to stop making the single player game? No, again, it's being developed by a completely different studio, and although they're part of the ZeniMax family, so the ZeniMax Online corporation, that encompasses Bethesda Softworks, which is actually the publishing partner for this game, Bethesda Game Studios, and that's the developer that has worked on the console single player Elder Scrolls, as well as the Fallout titles, and then other companies like id and Arcane Studios. So they're part of the same, I guess you'd call it the same conglomerate. So they're under that ZeniMax umbrella, but they're not directly the same. So that's an important distinction, not only because it means that the existence of this MMO isn't going to hamper the single player games. In fact, they're again completely separate. But it also means that things are a little, unsure, I suppose, I'd say. Because as of right now, ZeniMax Online Studios, they're unproven. I mean, they haven't they've been working on this game since their inception. They haven't produced anything for us to say, hey, this is what ZeniMax has done in the past. So let's use that to determine how we think this MMO is going to be. But I do understand that they're working with Bethesda. Did you get any sense of that, Jesse? Was that brought up at all when you visited?
Really, I don't know, and I think that's where we're all at, is we just don't know.
Right. They've said things like, oh, we're talking with the guys who made the single player games and trying to make sure like the lore is matched in place and things like that.
Yeah, for that aspect of it, they definitely hammered home this fact, and it was they were creating an online game, and they wanted it to be an online game, not a MMORPG. So they wanted to walk a fine line between the Elder Scrolls experience, which is this amazing world where you play a certain way in every one of the games. And then in this online world, which is, you have your hot buttons and your hot bar, and you play and it's all these different things like that. So it's one of those, they wanted to walk a fine line between playing with friends and enjoying the Elder Scrolls world and having an online game. Mm-hmm. And I think what they did, they came up with a pretty great solution in that it isn't, I think you can see on the screen right now, there isn't a lot of button pressing and things like that. You're using your mouse just like you would in Skyrim, for example, so your right and left mouse buttons are your shield and attack, and you only have, at the time that I played it, I guess that would be like a super alpha, there were only 5 actual buttons. It was numbers 1 through 5, mm-hmm. and then there was a 6, which was like a special button. And so those were your abilities. And it was more Diablo-esque in that you had to select what you wanted to put in there to maximize your character, but it all flowed really well. So, for example, I played a Dragon Knight, and he would, for his one ability, he would do a sort of a stomp ability, and for 2, he would latch onto guys and pull them towards him, like a get over here maneuver. And so I just rebound it, so 1 was the get over here and 2 was the stomp. So I'd pull him over and stomp him instantly. It was just a 1-2 move. And it was real fluid, real quick. The combat is very much like it is in Skyrim in that where you face is where you swing. You don't necessarily target people. You're looking at them. You can play as an over-the-shoulder view or first-person view or all the way out that huge MMO view. And so there are multiple ways of playing, but as in the video, you can see people are facing where they're trying to hit. And that's how you play. And I don't know if this gives you the best view of what it's like, because playing first person is amazing. And so visually, all the videos they've released, I always want to be like, what computer are you using? Because actual playing it looks way better than any of the videos they've released. So I don't know, but there's a lot here. There's a lot to talk about with this game, and we definitely aren't going to get to it today, which is why we have this wonderful podcast.
Right, yeah. And something about, you mentioned the targeting system. From what I understand too, like there's the general the general Elder Scrolls combat that you're capable of doing, but there's also supposed to be like a soft targeting system, which is going to make it so that you don't have to, for example, if you look at Skyrim, and if you're playing an archer class, which is what I had primarily played in that game, you would make sure you would always have to hit with your shots. You'd have to like lead people and stuff like that. Range classes are going to have a soft targeting system that will allow you to pick a specific target, so you don't have to aim your skills. So they're sort of doing like a mix between the regular Elder Scrolls and then more sort of a more traditional standard MMO type of targeting system. Was that soft targeting something that you experienced, or you were just playing a melee class?
When I was there, I only had access to, I think there were 2 melee classes that you could choose from. So I was not aware of that system. So that's an entirely new thing for me.
Yeah.
The one thing I was aware of is that the spells in this game, any spells by any class, work congruently, I guess would be the word. They work together. So if you're in the back and you have some sort of ranger ability, and I'm in the front and I have some sort of dragon knight ability, we can combine those abilities sort of Chrono Trigger-ish and form a super ability, which is really creative. And I kind of like that idea about this game. And that's one of the things that I really like. But on the flip side, enemies can do the exact same thing. So one of the really cool examples we got when we were playing was the Dwemer like robot guys. What they would do is they would sort of get together and they would group up, and one would maybe make a shell, like a bubble, to protect them from range attacks, and the other would stay in that bubble and shoot you with ranged attacks. Or maybe one would buff everyone, and then one would stay behind and shoot ranged attacks, and one would run right at you and tank you, the player. Which is, so not only are you doing epic party maneuvers, but the enemies are doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really, really creative thing that I don't think we've seen in a lot of games. So that should definitely change up how you play.
Yeah, and that's actually, it's funny because one of the videos that we'll be taking a look at later in the cast, they talked about advanced combat, and that was one of the things that they really touched on in this game, is that you're able to combine things. An example that was used was, say you're playing like a rogue class and you can set this trap, and then you can have one of the casters combine to that trap and say, like, add a silence effect to it, or add like a fire damage effect to it, or you could have one of the warrior classes add a caltrops effect to it, so do some damage over time in addition to just immobilizing him with the trap. So that combination of spells is really cool. It isn't entirely new. I do believe that is in that's a system that they use in Guild Wars 2 as well, I believe, but that's not a bad thing necessarily. Obviously, in anything in gaming, when you're trying to make something, it's a combined effort from games similar in the past, and you're trying to sort of take the best things from other titles and combine them into yours and have that fit the spirit and the realm of the thing you're trying to do. But yeah, it's really good. That's definitely a good addition. That's definitely a good influence that they're pulling from other places. And I'm not sure, do you know, you played a little bit of Terra? Was there spell combination in Terra as well?
Oh man, Terra had definite combos.
Not sure if it was quite the same though, was it?
Yeah, I don't think it was the same. No, but I definitely. I'm reading the chat go by, and people have so many questions. This is the very first episode, and I wish there's so much to talk about with this game.
Right.
So much to talk about, and we probably aren't going to have time today to talk about it. But there's, that's why we're going to do this on a weekly basis.
Right.
But I definitely think that the combo mechanics of the game and combining things are there's certain bosses that you have to do stuff like that with. That I thought was really cool. Or I don't know if you have to, but it makes it easier. Wink,
sure.
Wink, nudge, nudge. And so I feel like there's so much here to just wrap our heads around. But at the same time, it's all in that early stage, so we don't know what is going to be viable for an actual game and what's not.
Right. And also just as Jesse said, this is our first podcast here for this particular one, and for that we need to apologize if there's any hiccups. I saw some people saying you were too loud. I think I've adjusted your volume, so you should be all set.
I moved my mic away too, so
these technical issues we'll make sure that we hammer away in future episodes. So I apologize if things are a little bit shoddy right now. We'll try to make sure we get that taken care of in subsequent episodes once again. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to talk about. It's definitely a really exciting time for any fans of the Elder Scrolls series, and of course, hopefully for any fans of MMOs. I'm hoping that they can bring some new things. Some of the best things that we like about the single-player Elder Scrolls games, if we could bring that into an MMO, that'd be fantastic. And they've talked about things. There's going to be a whole phasing system, and where we could talk about the mega server and everything like that, but there's going to be this whole phasing system, and they're also going to incorporate things like being able to steal from people. So I've heard that's evidently going to be something that exists, which I hope that they can do that. I hope they can do that right. I mean, with a game like this, it's such an interesting concept to have an MMO and be able to like steal a sweet roll from somebody's house or something. Just as an example, because with so many people, you'd have to worry, well, are they going to be respawns, or is that sweet roll just going to be gone forever? Like, how are things like that going to work? Definitely a lot of questions and stuff that as we continue along the game's development and we learn more, we're going to try to get those answers for you. So let's go back here to the basics though, and try to lay some of the groundwork of this game.
We did wonder a little bit. We did get a little off topic and start.
That'll happen.
There's so many things here, PvP and all the different things. But I would want to state, going back to what you're saying about the sweet rolls and stuff like that, little things like that do exist. There's lots of lore tidbits of books, and for example, when I played the game, we were in Skyrim, and we entered a dungeon, and the dungeon in the game looks dead on exactly like the dungeon in like those tombs in Skyrim that you would go into, and it has the whale and the eagle and the snake, and I'm trying to think what the other one is. Those little things that you can turn, and that's actually a mechanic in the dungeons in this. So it's very similar. The one thing people were kind of concerned about, and I think I saw some people in chat mention this, the idea that it might not look exactly like Elder Scrolls. They actually stress the reason why certain things are toned down and characters aren't as awesome and buffed as they could be. And this may change. This is still, they're still just making this game. The reason why is because in PvP, which is a major part of this game, because one of the things that you need to be aware of is, besides this being a game where, at the beginning, spoiler, your soul gets stolen, and you go on like a vendetta to get your soul back from the deities, you are on like this world, you're thrown into a world that is also at war. So you have the factions too. So besides the main storyline, that's the lore bit, there's also the lore of the world fighting. And so in the middle, Cyrodiil is this massive, open, super battleground. And the way that it was described to me, it seems like it's going to be the Guild Wars 2 battleground system of World v. World, but times a million. In that it's all connected, there's dungeons and raids and little like towns in there. And PvP, we could talk about that forever. And I feel like we need a whole episode just on PvP because it's nonsense. That's what I'm most excited about.
Probably like multiple, yeah. It's in the entire, just briefly to touch on it, it's this entire zone of Cyrodiil, which is basically Oblivion, that will be an entire zone dedicated specifically to PvP.
And it's not, and when we say zone, we don't mean like zone, as in, when you think of Warcraft, for example, Ashen Vale or something like that, that's not what they're talking about. This zone of Cyrodiil is the size of one of the entire areas of your faction. So, for example, if your faction is composed of, say, 13 zones, I don't know how much it would be. It would be that size. No, I think they actually said it's 2/3. It's something ludicrous.
It's huge, yeah.
And not 2/3, but it's like 2 of the 3 factions put together. Like their starting areas and their questing areas put together.
In fact, so I've got let me try to bring up.
Large amount.
We'll bring up the map. Yeah, so I've got the map here, and we haven't really touched about the factions yet, so just ignore those for the moment. But these are all the different areas in Tamriel that will be included in the game. There's Skyrim, Morrowind, Blackmarsh, Elsewhere, Valenwood, Somerset Isles, Hammerfall, and High Rock. And you see right there in the center, that is Cyrodiil, and that is the entire zone dedicated specifically to PvP. And it's gonna be there's like this whole crazy thing where you're taking towers and keeps, and the ultimate goal is to try to take the city in the center, in which, if you're the best PvPer, you can become the emperor.
And what I think is great about this is that Cyrodiil isn't just, and I love how we really don't have a track. This is just us like fawning over this game for the first episode. Deal with it, internet.
Yeah.
But Cyrodiil is this amazing concept where not only is it world v. world, sorry, internet. Not only is it that, where in this case it's the Daggerfall Covenant versus the Ebonheart Pact versus the Aldmeri. So it's this 3-way battle, but also there are raids in there, there are dungeons, there are public questing hubs, and where you can go in by yourself, but you join other people in like a major objective. And while this is all going on, it all helps the war effort. So if you go into a raid and you achieve some objective, whatever that may be, that helps your war effort. Who knows what you get from it? I don't think they've gotten that far yet. But so what happens is everything you do, being just yourself, you can go around and rob a town or whatever. One of the things they really stressed is you can do a million different. You can take over a town, for example, in this Cyrodiil battleground area, and if there's a farm or something there, you can use that to feed troops or it gives buffs. Who knows exactly what's going to happen there, because I didn't get to play it, so I don't really know. But from what they told me, that's sort of what it is. And the major thing here is, unlike Guild Wars 2, and this is a big problem that I have with Guild Wars 2, even though I love that combat system of World v. World, when you take over something, all the walls are immediately rebuilt, everything's good, everything's fine, and you're good. And here, how you do it in Elder Scrolls Online is you have to be strategic about it. If you go in with catapults and tear down walls and take over forts, those walls remain down until you repair them. And so if I was a smart third party, if I was Ebonheart, which is probably what I'm going to go, because they're the outcast badass. So if I was them and I was watching the other two factions fight and walls were all torn down, I'd wait until another faction took over the base and then send all my boys in and we take it back from you. And so there's this whole weird strategy thing going on, and something they said that they thought was a better strategy, and this is what they told us. So I would assume it's an actual thing you can do, is you can get all the food supplies around this base and then starve out the people inside or poison them, and so you can just enter the base and no one's in there. So maybe the only thing you have to repair is the door. And so that's a really cool strategy to take over a base. It will take longer, sure, but you'll actually have the walls up and you can repair stuff. And one of the things I'm going to mention this here, because since we're talking about the forts and things like the castles, I don't know if they'll do it, but when I was there, it was me and a bunch of other guilds. I can't say I'm like a guild leader of any sort, but they had a bunch of guild leaders there, and so we sat down to talk about, like guild housing and stuff like that. And one of the things that I suggested, and I'm holding them to this because I want them to do this because I think it'd be amazing. When you take over a fort and you claim it, if you claim that fort, all your guild housing stuff is there. So there aren't guild houses, its fort becomes your guild house. So you have more incentive to defend it. And they were like, that's a really good idea. Don't say that to me and not make it happen. Cinemax. I want that so badly.
Yeah, it's definitely really cool, and like you said before, all that, where there's probably going to end up being an entire episode dedicated to PvP, if not multiple ones, because it is so huge, and it's supposed to be such a significant part of the end game. I mean, again, an entire zone or continent or whatever the heck you even want to call it dedicated to it, just massive in size. So it's really exciting, and I did want to talk about the factions. We were just going to briefly touch on the three factions in the game. There's the Daggerfall Covenant, the Aldmeri Dominion, and the Ebonheart Pact. And I was just going to have us talk about this, but interestingly enough, they actually just released a video today, I believe. Let me take a look. Yeah, it was released earlier today. ZeniMax Online Studios released this 5-minute video going over the alliances at war, just talking about the three alliances. The Daggerfall Covenant consists of the Orcs, the Bretons, and Red Guards. The Aldmeri Dominion is the Altmer, which are the High Elves, the Bosmer, which are the Wood Elves, and the Khajiit. And then the Ebonheart Pact are the Nords, Dunmer, or the Dark Elves, and the Argonians. And so I thought we might as well just take a look at that video and use that to talk about some of the basics behind these alliances, why the war is taking place. So I guess we're just going to take a brief pause here and watch this and then sort of react to it. Did you want to say anything before we hop into this, though, Jesse?
Nope, I can't wait to see this. I have yet to see this.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and pull this up here and take a look at the newly released video for the Elder Scrolls Online called Alliances at War.
So the situation in Tamriel is that you've got three young muscular alliances around the periphery of the continent, and in the center is Cyrodiil, and there's a power vacuum there. Now, Cyrodiil is a big prize, a fertile heartland of the continent, and it's also the symbol of power over Tamriel in the white gold tower that has been the center of the empire for millennia now. So the three alliances all have their own reasons why they feel like they should be ruling Cyrodiil, but the fundamental reason is that the Empire and Cyrodiil and the family of nobles, the Tharns, that are ruling it are weak, and the alliances are strong. So the Empire is weak, but their leaders are cunning. The current occupant of the Ruby Throne in the Imperial City is Empress Regent Clivia Tharn, and her father is actually the Chancellor of the Elder Council. His name is Abner Tharn, and he is a very old but powerful and really wily battle mage, and his family have been secret Daedra worshippers for generations. So when he sees the threat of the three alliances around the periphery and their inevitable interest in Cyrodiil, he turns to his family's old allies, the Daedra, and Molag Bal's main agent on Tamriel, the necromancer Lord Manamarco. As the alliances become aware of Abner Tharn's Daedric connections, that becomes just one more powerful incentive to go into Cyrodiil and take him out. So, the alliances are very different, and they have different reasons, and they have different justifications for why they are going to be marching into the center of the continent. And this goes back to the individual leadership of the three alliances, and their motivations for why they're doing this in many ways reflects the values of the alliances themselves. The Daggerfall Covenant, the reason why they feel they must prosecute this war really goes back to history for them. The leader of the Daggerfall Covenant is High King Emmerich, a Breton. He is a sort of amateur historian of imperial history, and it's clear to him when the empire is strong, that's when things are peaceful and good for the people of Tamriel. And the empire is fundamentally a human endeavor, and at the moment the humans in Tamriel are failing, and it's up to the Daggerfall Covenant to take up the torch and keep the elves from mucking things up. Now, the Ebonheart Pact is more attuned to the mystical side of things. When they become aware that there's a great threat to Nirn, they decide that they're going to have to mobilize to confront it. Almalexia, one of the living gods of the tribunal, and one of the leaders of the Ebonheart Pact, she takes notice. The scryers and the priests and the wizard tell her that Molag Bal has got some kind of great magical existential threat to Nirn. Now, having the Empire working with Molag Bal and Manamarco absolutely cannot be tolerated. So the Ebonheart Pact decides they're going to have to muster their forces and march on Cyrodiil. The third alliance, the Aldmeri Dominion, is led by Queen Irene of the High Elves, and her reasons for pushing this war into Tamriel are geopolitical and also personal. Before she'd assumed the throne, Irene had been an adventurer in Tamriel, and she had suffered personally at the hands of Abner Tharn in the Imperial City. Irene has seen the rot at the heart of Tamriel, and she believes that it's time for the elves to resume their responsibility to rule, to retake the White Gold Tower, which they built in the first place, and to get rid of the bloody and warmongering humans who, in empire after empire, have been drenching the continent in oceans of blood. It's time for the elves to go in, kick the humans out, and put things back to rights. What's great about this from a gameplay standpoint is that it gives each alliance a distinctive feel and ambiance. They each have their own methods and goals. And the player gets to experience this difference from inside each alliance. They get to take up these methods and try to achieve these goals as they're playing through the story of the Alliance War. It's a hallmark of the Elder Scrolls series. There is no single truth about the world, that everybody sees things from their own vantage point. And it's that legacy of a rich and nuanced world that we've taken up and expanded upon for Elder Scrolls Online.
All right, so there you go. Once again, that was a look at the latest released video from ZeniMax Online called Alliances at War. Just taking a look at not only the three factions and their leaders, but the reasons behind the war efforts. So this is definitely more lore-focused. For those of you fans out there who like lore, I know Jesse is a huge lore buff in the games that he plays. So Jesse, now that we took a look at that, what do you think about that video? Pretty interesting, huh?
One, I love the fact that there's a dude who is like the official lore master, and two, that's his voice. Like that is that dude's. That guy wins on every level.
Absolutely,
he is my hero. That guy's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty cool. It is pretty cool to kind of understand the reasons behind their fighting, and I know that that's definitely like the lore is so sacred to fans of the Elder Scrolls series, and to have a good reason for this fight occurring is definitely important. In fact, one thing that was a complaint that I definitely saw levied. I did a couple of videos talking about the faction war, and one of the biggest complaints I saw people talking about is the fact that the Argonians were working with the Nords and the Dunmer, and they were talking about the fact that the Argonians are like they should not be working with these people. But as you can see, they're trying to have this make the most sense while also maintaining their goal of having three separate factions, which I guess primarily is a PvP focused thing. The reason for having three factions is to make the PvP in Cyrodiil that will be taking place more interesting and more diverse. But Yeah, it is really cool again to see their reasons, and just a little bit of backstory. Jesse mentioned how, you know, the game starts off where your soul has been taken from you by, it's Molag Bal, right? That's how you.
Yes, yeah, he was mentioned in the video. Yes.
Yeah, so Molag Bal takes your soul, and the whole point of this is like fighting against his invasion as he's trying to sort of take over all of Tamriel, take over Nirn, which is the name of the planet, I believe. But yeah, to understand the reason behind these people fighting, like to have the Daggerfall Covenant fighting for their reasons, Ebonheart Pact working together for the mystical ones, and the Aldmeri Dominion, they're all like the elves. All the elves working together, and the Khajiits, yeah.
and that's what I really like about this is that's why I love the idea of the Ebonheart. Is I have that feeling that I felt going into World of Warcraft, where the Horde is just like, look, we don't really like each other, but we're going to work together. That's what I like about the Ebonheart Pact. Is there's a lot of room there for some really good storylines, especially with the inherent racism of the Nords and the whole Argonian dark elf sort of like storyline. There's a lot there that I think that faction is going to be really fun to play. But that's if they do it. I would love to, if you play Argonian and you end up in a Nord city, if they treat you like crap, that would be an amazing inclusion to that game.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the really exciting things again about the Elder Scrolls series is that there's so many tense relationships between the different factions that you have to deal with in every single one of the games. You know, depending on the race that you pick, you have to deal with factions that just absolutely despise you as you make your way throughout the world and enter cities, like Jesse mentioned. That'd be definitely a really cool inclusion. And I just have to, you know, go out on a limb and say that that's probably something that they'll be taking into consideration when they deal with NPC dialogue in the various areas of the world as you travel. Which is again really exciting to kind of keep that immersiveness going on. So I guess we've covered some of the basic stuff here. We've talked about a little bit of the lore. Again, we just took a look at that video for the reasons behind the war efforts that are taking place. Briefly touched on the faction PvP. We also briefly talked about the combat, and again, the point of this particular cast is to just cover those most basic of things. There's a whole lot more that we'll be able to go into depth for in future cast. But I think that's going to do it for the real basic stuff. I'd like to move into news now, unless there's something else you wanted to talk about, Jesse.
No. I mean, we have plenty of time to talk, so
right.
we'll do future episodes and that kind of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so nice little brief, nice little introduction to the game there. Let's move on to some of the most recent Elder Scrolls news. The first thing I wanted to talk with you guys about and draw your attention to is some new videos that came out. Again, now we just saw that video, but just last week there were actually 4 videos released by Game Informer. There was video for talking about the designing of a modern day MMO, videos talking about designing quests, lore, as well as advanced combat. All of those can be found on Game Informer. Either you could specifically go to the website, or you could just take a look at their YouTube page. But those are pretty interesting, and the only reason we're not going to be showing those here is because they are really long. 2 of them are like 15 minutes plus, and the other 2 are around 10 minutes long.
If I had to describe questing for you really quick, I can easily do it this way. The build of the game that I played, we started on an island, and it was a Nord island, and the way it starts is you're told, hey, the Daggerfall Covenant is coming. We need to get off this island. But there are scouts and people around the island who we have to find first. So your objective is either, one, at this point, you can branch off and either go out and save as many as you want, and you can, just do your questing or whatever, or you can be like, screw them, and go and get out off the island. And so what happens is, when I played, I know a lot of people who were with me in that room just said screw it and moved on. Mm-hmm. But what I did is I went around and did all the quests, got all the people, got all the rewards associated with that. And then in the scene when you leave the island, not only do they help hold off the Daggerfall guys who are attacking you, but as you go through, they help you set traps and escape. And then when you get to the next place, they're all there with you. So it sort of changes the way the game is as you play. So what's really great about it is those who left didn't get the benefits of those people that they had saved. And if you save a few of them, the question then becomes, what benefits do you get there? And if you save one, what happens if you save one, right? Things like that. There's so many variables that I almost wish I had time to go back and only save one person and see what happens.
Yeah,
so that kind of questing is really creative.
Right. Something else I'm really looking forward to as well is in watching these videos, they talked about how they're going to handle just the acquisition of quests. You know, so many MMOs have the designated quest hub. You go to this town, there's 5 NPCs there. They each have a quest. There's a bounty board that has a couple of quests for you to go kill whoever. And what they're trying to do is, while there will be NPCs that will be giving you specific quests, they're also trying to make it much more of an exploration way of acquiring quests and completing quests. So they're going to have this hub system that works, from what I understand, based on the way they described it, it's going to work a lot like it does, say, in Skyrim, where if you're walking about, there's going to be this little information display talking about, relative to your position, points of interest. So there's a cave over there. There's no dragons in this game, but there's a specific type of enemy over here that you might be able to fight. There's a small little town over here, or there's like a tower over here. And so they're really trying to keep the spirit of Elder Scrolls games, in the sense that when you are walking about, if you see something that interests you, you can go do that, and you're going to be all set. Like, if you go into this area and kill this thing, and it would happen to be a quest as well, you'll be able to just complete it, and just by walking up and doing it. It's not something that you have to, okay, first I've got to go to this town right here. First I've got to go to Rivenwood before I go to the cave and kill those things. If you happen to just wander in the cave and kill it, you completed a quest within the game, and you're going to be rewarded for that with experience and any other quest rewards that they give you. So that is really cool to be able to have that system, and again, encourage the fact that people can just want to explore in Elder Scrolls games and do what they want to do. They don't want to be told what to do from an NPC from quest to quest.
And this is something that we should include in this episode right off the bat that we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But I know a lot of people are concerned about leveling and where you put stats and things like that. I can confirm it because I played it and I saw it, although it may change, so who knows. But from what I saw, it is identical to Skyrim in that you have your magicka, your health, and your stamina. And all of those affect how you play. And so, if you buff magicka, you get more magic. If you buff your stamina, you get more stamina, so you can swing more and do things, because it's like an Elder Scrolls game, and if you buff your health, you have more health. Mm-hmm. But within that buff, the more points you put into those things, so for example, for me, I put more points into stamina, I kept just pumping points into stamina, it increases other benefits. Like health, you pump points into health, it increases your, not only overall health, but some defensive skills it gives you. If you have stuff in the magicka, it lowers the cost of spells a bit, things like that. And so for stamina, there's a lot of regens. And so what happened is, it started where I had out-of-combat regens, where my life would go up really fast if I was out of combat. And eventually I kept putting so many points in, by level 14, I had in-combat regen. So I'm sitting there being this awesome Dragon Knight, dual-wielding, which, again, one of the things we forgot to mention, there's so much to talk about. In this game, you can wear anything, you can use anything, and there are no restrictions on any of it.
Right.
So there are no, if you kill a boss and a staff drops, rather than be like, which mage is going to take it? Anyone can take that staff, and anyone can use that staff. So you can be a Dragon Knight who wields a staff, who wears light armor, who has the abilities of like a Dragon Knight, but you're very magical in power.
Now,
right? You can
with that said, though, it's important to distinguish the fact that depending on the class that you decide to be, you'll be much more effective in certain things.
Oh, obviously, but
actually, they mentioned it in one of those videos too. They said if you're playing the rogue class and you want to have a staff, that's specifically what they said. If you want to have a staff and hit someone at long range, you can do it. You're not going to be crazy effective because your synergies and your abilities aren't going to be focused towards that type of an attack. But you can still have that and you can still do something with it. So
right, and what I think is real creative is the thing that I like the most is, I went dual wielding right off the bat. I found 2 swords and was just ready to go as Dragon Knight. And the fighting is much more faster and much more fluid. And when we actually get a chance to talk about combat, one of the things that I really, really love is the when you actually play, the enemies they don't sit there and do spam attacks or anything. If they do a super attack, you see them power up and get ready, so you can move out of the way, things like that. So again, it's much more than just an MMO. I think that's what they wanted to focus on. There's so much stuff to talk here, but there's much more than it. The reason why it's called Elder Scrolls Online and not like Elder Scrolls MMO is because they want you to understand that their goal is not to make it an MMO. Clearly it is. It's a massively multiplayer online game, but they want it to be a game that feels like it's the Elder Scrolls but with friends. And I think that's what they're trying to focus on. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. Again, fingers crossed. Lots of high hopes, and the combat system is really cool. I like the idea that they're keeping it Elder Scrolls based with those 3 stats, and they also talked about the fact that your stamina stat is definitely going to affect in combat. If you run up to combat and you run out, then you're not going to be as effective. And they specifically even mentioned that you'll be using that attribute to break out of CC. So if you run into combat and you drain yourself out and someone stuns you with something, you'll just be stuck there. So you've got to be really strategic in the way that you use the resource pools that you have, just like you do in the single-player Elder Scrolls games. And I think that's going to definitely make a big difference to making this still feel like that experience, but on a much larger scale with a lot more people.
Yes, and that's the key. Is the combat feels like a Elder Scrolls game, in that your stamina is what lets you run. So you can run like full blast and get places, but if you don't have high stamina, if you're running and then suddenly you're attacked, you are screwed because you cannot swing your weapon. Mm-hmm. Like it's just like those types of games where suddenly you have no ability, so you have to back off and wait, and so that's an entirely different thing.
Yeah. Also news that I wanted to mention for people is this is actually really exciting. The fact that beta signups might be taking place very soon. After a Twitter conversation was posted up on a German Elder Scrolls site, this following tweet from Elder Scrolls Online that said we'll open beta signups in the coming months, at which point you'll apply to participate, and we'll explain how invites work. So it looks like sometime in the relative future, whether or not it's going to be this month or next month, I'm not sure, but they are planning to start beta signups sometime relatively soon. So that is definitely really, really exciting. I know certainly something I'm looking forward to. I mean, we can talk about the game all we want, which is what we'll be doing here on the podcast, but it won't be until we actually get in there and start playing that we can really talk in depth as to how the game feels, the various systems, and the direction that they are taking things. And it is, again, going to be the most exciting time. I'm a little worried about the rest of my games coverage, to be honest, once this beta opens up. I feel like things might drop to shit. I'll be too busy playing this, but it's exciting nonetheless, for sure. And then also I wanted to call people's attention to a article on 10 Ton Hammer that talks about the top 5 reasons to play the Elder Scrolls Online. You can again find that by going over to 10 Ton Hammer. The first reason of which is the epic personal story. They're going to try to make sure the personal story is the world is focused on you, and this is something else that they've also talked about, that the main storyline within the game is going to be single player focused, and they'll be using phasing techniques and instances to make it so that you're the person that when you're experiencing the main story about the world, it's going to be primarily you, and you'll still have that single player experience even within the world of an MMO as you go through the main story. Now, when we talk about like endgame dungeons and PvP and stuff, that will of course be on a massive scale with lots of other people. But again, as you level your character and play through that story, it will be an individual, personalized experience, which is definitely exciting. Was there any of that experienced when you played at all? Did you deal with any phasing or instanced stuff? That you recall?
With the different people who joined you when you saved them, that was phasing. Mm-hmm. But I don't recall anything. I know they tried to get us to go to one point where there was Moloch Ball has like this hooks that he has into the world, and if you go to these chains, there's super monsters there, and so we tried to go fight them, and I tried to get there, but we ran out of time, and so I didn't get a chance to get there. But some people did, and so that's like a special event area, and then there's different instance quests that happen, but it's all in the same world where I can be standing right next to you, and it's honestly, I have no clue how they pull it off. It's interesting.
Yeah. And the mega server and all that stuff is something we'll be talking about in the future as well. But just to briefly touch on it, this is one of the most exciting, but I've also talked about in prior videos, some of the reasons this could be damaging is the mega server experience. The way it's going to work is you'll never actually personally, while playing the game, deal with having to select a server or server queues. They're implementing the system in which you essentially fill out a survey when you make your character upon starting the game that talks about the type of player you are. So you could it'll deal with things likely like age demographic, whether or not you're focusing on PvP or PvE, if you're a casual player, if you like to RP, and based on the answers to those questions, and also based on your friends list and any guild that you may be in, it is going to place you in an instance of the world that will match you up with people that are like you. So if you say, and as an example, if you say, hey, I'm a 25 to 30-year-old male, I like PvP and PvE progression, and I hate dealing with whiny people, and maybe not will place you with a younger age demographic or something like that, or I hate dealing with trolls, just as an example. So it's pretty interesting how they're going to do that, and again, they'll be using. It's not the traditional shard system that you see, for example, in Guild Wars 2 or World of Warcraft. And while there are still technically separate servers, it's all like under the hood, something that you're not personally seeing. And once more, they're just sort of matching you with people who are like you. And I like that, but at the same time, I'm a little worried that with these different worlds, so if I log in and I'm placed in this specific world, you might deal with people bouncing in and out of those server instances, if you will. And so I'm concerned that we're going to have to worry about not always being with the same people or against the same people, depending on whenever you log in, what instance of the world that you're placed in. Unless they make it like you filled the survey and you are in a set instance, and unless it like gets to capacity or drops down, you won't deal with any change in people. I don't know if this is something.
The thing that they stressed, and this is why they said, like, look, we could have gone all out with the character creation, but the reason, and the character creation is kind of amazingly fun, but the reason why they didn't make it like that next level of detail is because they want to make it so you can have a lot of people online. So you very, very well may end up in the exact same place every single time.
Right.
Because they can afford to have that many people on. Like, the way they're developing it is so you can have that access to get on and you see the same people every single time.
Yeah. Although, but you'd have to imagine, too, at the same time that, like, if the server instance gets full, then they're going to dump people into another one. So it might be one of those instances where, like, I'm in an instance of a server and I know people in the enemy faction and I know people I'm allied with, but then if it fills up, I might be one of those unlucky people who get dumped into another instance of the server, and then all of a sudden my friends and enemies aren't the same people anymore. I mean, I don't know if that's exactly.
I'm pretty sure that they. This is one of those things that I would love to interview them about, but I'm almost positive that when I was there, they literally said that would never happen.
Really?
Like, they are making it so you will always be with your friends, you will always be with your guild, and people you fight will always be the same. Like, that's the reason why they're going for it. And they want this super mega server because of that reason. They don't want people split. They want everyone in the same area, and they want you to have an experience that actually people live in this world and are constantly doing stuff, rather than it be like one main city's filled with people and then maybe a raid hub area and then everything else is barren. Their goal is to make everything filled with people.
Yeah. So, and that's, it makes the world feel more lived in, and especially if they can keep if they can try to keep the same people in the same area, in the same instances of the world, then that would be ideal. So hopefully that is something that they can pull off, and hopefully we don't have to deal with my worry, which is like the overflow, if you will. Because again, that could be kind of annoying if that ends up happening. One of the coolest things about MMOs, in my experience, is the rivalries, be it with people in your alliance or against you. So it'd be good if they could, again, maintain that. It's definitely what we'd ideally like to see. So, right. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that we're going to do it. We're going to wrap up this episode here, our first ESO Cast. And what we plan to do in future episodes, beyond talking about the game and any news and general hot button topics that are brought up within the community. We're also going to bring on community guests, people potentially from various fan sites and stuff like that, as well as developer guests. I've been in touch with ZeniMax, and it looks like we'll definitely be able to line up either some developer guest on the show or people who are just working on the game, which will definitely be really exciting, again, as we continue to talk about and speculate about this upcoming MMO that that both Jesse and I are really excited for. So I guess we'll wrap it up. Jesse, any closing words here for fans of the cast or the show, or the game?
Stay tuned. There's a lot of things we don't know. I see a lot of people asking questions in chat. We just don't know the answers to a lot of things yet.
Yeah.
They just haven't announced a lot of things. And we only know what we know.
Right.
So
there's definitely a bit of
stay
information,
tuned.
and there's definitely like a lot more than we've talked about. Again, this was just a general introduction. But check out those Game Informer. If you go to the Game Informer YouTube site, there's about 4 videos that go in some fairly good depth about the game and some plans that they have. And also, I would suggest checking out the Elder Scrolls Online Reddit page as well. It's a good way to keep up to date on what's going on. But I guess we'll wrap it up. So thanks for joining me, Jesse, for this first episode. Looking forward to the rest of them. And thanks to all of you guys for watching and listening. This will be available for viewing later on. It is going to be recorded and uploaded onto the channel. So if you missed part or a majority of the cast, you'll be able to check it out later, at a later time in today. And we're going to finish it. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoy this, and tune in next week for more Elder Scrolls Online coverage. Thank you, Jesse.
See ya.